All right, guys. Today we are going to narrow in on a topic that I talk about often, which is regulating your nervous system. And you guys know if you've been consuming my content, I'm constantly talking about this, but I do talk about how to do it. It's woven through the episodes and through my content online, but I don't think I've actually just done one episode talking about what this is, how it affects your life, and how to actually do it. And there's a lot of information about the nervous system out online now, which is a good thing. I'm glad that more people are talking about it. But I do think there are some aspects of it missing. And in some content, there's like kind of holes in it and how it applies to your life directly. And then some content is a little too complex, right? Because obviously we're talking about things in the body. There's, words that not all of us need to retain and know in order for this information to still be effective. But like the reality is some of these words are big. You know what I mean? And sometimes when there's too many big words, it's hard for us to comprehend, right? and and so my goal today is to break it down in pretty layman's terms. And the reason being is like I think the majority of you who are listening to this aren't trying to go be facilitators of nervous system regulation. Maybe you are. So if you are, all the kudos, all this might be a little basic for you, but I think the majority of you just want to understand how it's going to improve your quality of life. So I'm going to give you the basics of what you need to start making a difference in your life today. Okay. So I'm going to start by saying this. When I was going through that period in my life where I realized things need to be different, and I went on what I would call a healing journey, which really started probably about 10 years ago now. Um, I was at a point in my life where, again, I had a great income, great job, had done all the things everyone told me to do, and I still felt empty and lonely inside. I had a lot of guilt. I was constantly asking myself, like, is this it? Because I had done all the things everyone told me to do, yet I still felt very like disconnected within. And so this is what sparked my healing journey, because aside from those inner feelings and thoughts, I was barely sleeping through the night. I was throwing up once a week from stress. I thought it was food allergies. It was not. Um, it was purely stress induced. Um, my relationships, I found myself very irritable and impatient. I was constantly overthinking. I was constantly just like driving myself into a wall, and so I was at least aware enough to know that I needed to do something different to relieve the constant anxiety and tension I felt in my body, but I didn't know where to start. So when I first started, I went down a heavy spiritual path, which I'm grateful for. And so, I've done everything from like very super spiritual woo stuff all the way to very scientific stuff. And from all the things I've done, like I've done literally everything. I've done sound healing, I've done meditation, I've done energy healing. One thing I haven't done is I have not taken any medicine, and that's natural or pharmaceutical. Like I've never touched plant medicine, and I've never touched antidepressants or anything like that. That's one thing I won't do. And my personal philosophy on that, no knocking it to you if you do it, but I've always felt like I wanted to really be in control of my healing. And like if I used anything, it would mask the power of what I was capable of doing. So for instance, like I struggled with sleep for a decade, like at least 10 years I struggled with sleep. And, people would say, like, just take melatonin or smoke some weed. And like, okay, so those are natural, things that you could do. But even with the melatonin, which is something our body naturally produces, okay, even with melatonin, I was like, if I take the melatonin, I'm not going to be able to get to the root cause of why I can't sleep in the first place, even though it's natural. And so I don't necessarily recommend that to everybody, because that's the harder path, because then in the process of me not sleeping, I'm getting more sleep deprived, and it's kind of creating this vicious cycle. But my point in saying that is when you're taking anything to help soothe this symptom, natural or not, it is preventing a bit of a layer between you figuring out what's actually causing the disruption and you getting the healing that you need. I hope that makes sense. So no knock to anyone, but I would just say that's something to consider if you are using something external to you to soothe the symptom that you're feeling. But back to my point, I've done everything. And if I was to tell you the one thing out of everything I've done that will change the quality of your life, the quality of your sleep, the amount of joy you can experience in your life, the amount of money you can make in your life, the type of relationships you can attract, it comes down to your nervous system and learning how to regulate it. Okay? If you can if you can understand that skill and learn how to master that instrument, the instrument being your own body, I promise you there's nothing you can't attract or do in this world. There's nothing that you can't accomplish. Like, and I know that sounds like maybe a little rah or like a little like, okay, I'm into, but I'm dead ass serious. Like, if you learn to understand your nervous system inside and out, and it's constantly evolving, by the way, but if you learn how to use that instrument and fine tune it, like, there literally isn't anything that you can't do. Okay. So, with that being said, for today's episode, I am going to get into the basics of how you can start to understand that instrument and what it is, how it affects your life, and again, how you can start using it to your advantage. And many of you have probably heard me say that if you are a leader of any type, that could be a leader of a household, maybe you've got kids or spouse, that could be a leader of a team or a business or an organization of some sort. You cannot afford to not know how your nervous system works. Okay. Because your nervous system is your essentially, it's your like aura is the word coming to mind, but it's your brand. It is the energy people feel when you walk into a room. It is the energy people feel through the phone. It all comes from your nervous system. Okay. And so obviously we know when you can enter a room and people feel welcomed and warmed and attracted to your energy, that's a lot different than when you walk into a room and people are like, oh God, this guy again. Like, even if he is my boss, even if he is my husband, like, shit. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing I see when I work with my clients is when they realize the impact of their nervous system on their family and their friends and their team. To be honest, for the moment they realize what it means, a lot of them usually feel sad because they see how their dysregulation has impacted the people around them, and they feel bad because that's never their intention, is to make people feel worse or more on edge or more fearful. But again, they did it subconsciously. And I always appreciate people being honest with me about that, is because the whole point is not to shame you into being like, oh, see how your bad mood has affected everybody. No, not at all. It's to empower you with the skills to improve what's happening internally in your instrument so that it's positively affecting those around you. And I tell people all the time when they come to me that when you start this journey, like, you might be starting it for you and to feel better about yourself, but absolutely, this is going to have positive effects on all the people around you, your connections, your business, your household, your health. All of it is absolutely going to be on the rise in the right direction because of this work. So, layman's terms, the nervous system is the gatekeeper to how much you enjoy your life and the amount of abundance and love you can attract to it. So let's get into it. What is the nervous system? So, again, going to keep it as simple as I can for today, just so you can take away the information that you need. Your nervous system, the autonomic nervous system specifically, is the part of your nervous system that's responsible for the things that happen automatically in your body. So, your ability to digest food, your ability to breathe and pump blood through your system and think, your subconscious, your ability to navigate stress. And so it's essentially the survival part of your body, right? All the things that you need to do to survive your day, the moment, happen based on the instruction of the autonomic nervous system. Okay. Now, what the autonomic nervous system's job is to keep you alive. And the way it does that is by scanning your environment in every millisecond for danger. Okay. Again, if we think about its purpose being to keep you alive and to help you survive, then it needs to know if it needs to prepare for imminent danger or something that's a threat. So it's constantly scanning your environment all day long. Okay. Now, there's two states for simplicity. There are more, but for today's conversation, I'm giving you the two blanket ones, this is all you need to know, that your nervous system will exist in, which is dysregulated or regulated, also known as sympathetic or parasympathetic. Those are the more technical terms, okay? And again, disclaimer, guys, you don't need to remember the technical terms. I'm gonna graze over them today, but the basics is all you need to know to be able to use this information for yourself. So the sympathetic state is when you are dysregulated, which is essentially when the nervous system thinks that there's a potential threat looming, and so it's preparing you for survival. Okay, it's preparing you to potentially fight to stay alive. Okay. When you are in your parasympathetic, this is what they often refer to as rest or digest. This means you're regulated. This is the state that you will come down from after you're dysregulated, so the body can get back to what we call a balanced state. Okay. When you're balanced, then your body has the ability to heal. It has the ability to process food. It has the ability to bring you to the present moment. Okay. So you're always going to be in either a regulated or a dysregulated state, and there's kind of degrees to both. But again, for today, one of the two. Now, the challenges with today's society is that we are being constantly hit with potential threats, okay? Our nervous systems haven't evolved that far off of our ancestors who used to live out in tribes in nature. Okay. So if you think about those times when we were people living out in nature, the only threats we typically would ever face are like physical threats. So, we're living in our tribe. You're living in nature, we hunt, and maybe a bear starts chasing us. And so obviously when the bear starts chasing us, our nervous system goes, oh no, this isn't safe. And it gets us into a sympathetic or dysregulated state. Okay. And what happens in that state is it does everything. It takes energy away from the areas that you do not need to survive in that moment. Okay. So for instance, one thing I talk about often is your prefrontal cortex, which is a part of your brain that's necessary for problem solving, critical thinking, seeing big picture. It goes, she doesn't need that right now. Whoop, it shuts it down. It pulls the energy from that resource. Your digestion. She doesn't need to digest food right now. We're running from a bear. Whoop, pulls energy from that part, shuts that down. Okay. She doesn't need to be healing her wound or her cut or this infection in her body right now. We need that energy to run from this bear. Boom. So it pulls the energy from that system. And so all these things that would be helping you heal or grow get shut down because the body goes, she doesn't need that right now. Right now is about survival, and we need to preserve our energy because we don't know how long this threat's going to be around us. So we're going to pull energy from all these centers, okay, until this bear is gone. Now, again, back in those days, a bear would chase you. Once the bear was gone, the threat's over, and now you go back to living in nature and your body can come back down into a balanced state. The challenge with today's society is we are facing psychological and emotional threat more so than physical threat. Of course, physical threat can still happen. There can be intruders, there can be car accidents, things like that. But more often than not, we're dealing with stressors that are psychological and emotional. A fight with your spouse, getting canceled on the internet, someone making a negative comment about you, an email from a boss who's upset. These are threats that our body is anticipating as potential danger. Okay. And here's the thing about the nervous system is it can't discern between what type of threat it's facing or how threatening it actually is. Okay. So for instance, you could be walking past actually here, I'll use this example. I heard Mark Groves talking about it on a podcast with Kaler, and he said he had these glucose monitors he was wearing, which essentially measures your insulin spikes. Okay. And so I think he was feeding a horse, and the horse tried to buck him or kick him. So obviously a physical threat. And so when he went home later that night, on the glucose monitor, he saw the spike that happened from the horse potentially, hurting him, physical threat. And he noticed that same spike was also what happened when he had an uncomfortable conversation with his spouse. He had that same spike. So what that shows is the body doesn't know the difference between someone talking shit about you on the internet or you potentially getting hit by a car. it's all threatening to the nervous system. Okay. So, because the nervous system can't discern whether something's an actual threat to our safety or not, it's automatically going to kick you into survival mode or to a dysregulated state, and then you're going to be in this on edge defense mode all day. Okay? Now the problem with this is our nervous systems aren't meant to stay in this space all day long. And so when we're talking about burnout, the reason we get to the point of burnout is because we've been in a dysregulated or survival state for so long that our energy resources are shot. Okay. Our adrenals, or the cortisol is stuck on 100. Like our energy levels, our resources are shot. And so then we get to this point of almost being like a frayed wire or a live wire, where now we don't have the plastic coating around anymore. We're just exposed. And so anything can set us off. We're highly reactive. We're highly irritable. We can't sleep because sleep feels threatening, which just sounds wild, but it's true. Like all these things start to come up. Okay. So again, you can either exist in a regulated state or a dysregulated state. But if you're in a dysregulated state for too long, this is where things start to spiral and you start to see a lot more of these symptoms of burnout come up. And then that's when life starts to feel hard, even though you might not be dealing with actual real threatening things, but you've been dealing with day after day of uncomfortable conversations and maybe some conflict or whatever the case is. It starts to take a toll on you, even though they might not be quote unquote big deals or really serious conversations. Every time you do that and you get dysregulated and you don't regulate yourself in between, your body stays in this survival mode, which is not sustainable for any of us. Okay. So what you have to understand is this, is the goal in all of this is not to make it so you never get triggered ever again. That's not realistic. The goal in learning how to regulate your nervous system is to close the window of how dysregulated you are and how much energy it takes up out of your body. Okay. So something that was, maybe it's an email from a boss or a client that set you off. Maybe you would have ruminated on that for a week or 2 weeks and it would have like consumed your thoughts. Maybe we can get that down to an hour or two, right? Think about how much energy that's going to save, because the reality is you're never not going to be triggered. Like, unless I take out your heart, like as long as you're a living, breathing human, you're always going to be triggered by something. That's inevitable. And it's not realistic to assume that you're just going to be zen all the time. We also don't want that. But it's that when you do get triggered, that gap, that amount of energy that it takes out of you can get shortened so that you don't have to deal with burnout or get stuck in perpetual burnout ever again, or get stuck in this just constant survival mode. Okay. So now let's focus on being dysregulated and how that can show up. So there's two main states that you will exist in when you are dysregulated, because we don't really need to talk about the regulated state so much. We know that when you're regulated, that means you're more present in the moment. You're able to think big picture. You're able to let go of things easier. You're able to access joy again and laugh and be creative and all the things that we would say are quote unquote positive things. When you're in a regulated state, that's when you can access them. Okay. So we don't really need to talk about that so much, but the goal, I will say, is to be in that state more often than not. You don't want to be there 100% of the time, because if you're there 100% of the time, that means you're not growing or expanding your capacity. But we want you to be there more often than not. And what we also do is we want to raise the level of what regulated means to you. So as you expand your capacity, as you expand what you are capable of doing and what you're exposed to, your baseline for being regulated, we want to gradually raise that so that you have new standards for what you want in your life. Okay. So we'll come back to that. Let's go back to being in a dysregulated state. So when you're in survival mode, that's going to show up in two prominent responses, which are fight or flight or freeze. I guess fight or flight is technically two, but they're often grouped together. So fight or flight is kind of one response, freeze is another response. And then there's another one called fawn, which I'll touch on briefly. But they have research has showed that fawning is actually not a physiological response, meaning it's not like ingrained in our body. Fawning is more of a learned response that we all do. Okay. And so fawning at its simplest form is people pleasing. So kind of doing whatever you need to do to not ruffle any feathers, to not have any confrontations. You kind of like shapeshift and kind of mold to whatever the situation calls for, just because you don't want to have any confrontation or any challenge. You just kind of say what you need to say in a conversation. You might talk to someone about a restaurant that they love and say, go on and on about how you love it too. Maybe you haven't been there, or maybe, talk about things at a social event that you actually don't care about, but you're pretending to care just to get along in the conversation. That's essentially fawning. Okay. And so we all do it to an extent. But again, it's more of a learned behavior versus a physiological response. So I'll touch on that as that, but let's go on to the two that we don't have as much control over. Okay. So let's start with freeze. So freeze essentially is when you're in a dysregulated state. So your body feels like there's a potential threat coming, and your response is to literally freeze and seize up. Okay. And the best example I use of this is a mouse. Okay. So imagine a mouse gets caught by a cat, and the cat bites it with its teeth and it's carrying it around in its mouth. Okay. If that mouse is not dead yet, its best survival strategy is to play dead while it's being carried around in the mouth, so that the moment that cat puts that mouse on the ground, it can get up and run away, right? Because if that cat starts, or that mouse starts squirming in the cat's mouth as it's still carrying it, then that cat's going to know it's not dead yet, and it's going to bite down and it's lights out, right? So the freeze response is something that's ingrained in us. It's a very old response that our nervous system has done for hundreds of thousands of years. And so that's when danger shows up. It's we play dead in hopes that it will go away. Okay. Now, the way this can show up, freeze response in like practical modern day situations, is you procrastinate a lot. You get to doom scrolling and don't get off the couch. You find reasons not to do something or put things off, or you might have a to-do list, so you'd rather talk about the to-do list than actually get it done. But here's the thing about freeze is most people will interpret people who freeze as being quote unquote lazy, when really people who are freezing feel the same anxiety and pressure to get things done as someone who's maybe more activated in their stress response. But their bodily response, their autonomic nervous system is taking over and saying, no, you need to freeze because we might die if we do this. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that's what's happening in the survival system of your subconscious, right? So an example of this may be, you wake up in the morning and you have you need to get this project done for work, okay? And it's due in 2 weeks. And you're like, okay, I need to start working on this every day so that by the time it comes, I'm prepared and ready. Maybe it's a presentation, let's say. But if there's a deep rooted fear of, let's say, public speaking or just speaking in general in front of people, that fear of having to do that presentation in 2 weeks could be enough to send you into freeze mode. And so then while you could potentially be preparing for it every single day for 2 weeks leading up to it, what you'll do is you'll put it off and put it off and put it off till the very last minute when you have no other choice to now activate and do it. And then now for these last couple days, you're in super, super dysregulated mode preparing for this presentation. And then you do it. And then after you wonder why you're so exhausted. Okay. So that's an example how freeze can show up. Now, another stress response that's common is fight or flight. And so what that means is when you get dysregulated, fight or flight means you need to do something about it now. And that means you're either going to fight your way to it, means we need to find a solution to this right now. Like I'm not sitting in this, like we need to resolve this now. Or flight means you're going to do something to distract yourself from what it is. So they're very activating behaviors. But one is confronting it head on and being like, we need to resolve it ASAP. And one of it goes, I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm going to distract myself by doing something else. Okay. And this is a common one I see in high performers, in the sense that, when you have something to get done, this shows up in perfectionism. Like, I'll just take care of it all myself right now to make sure it gets done properly, blah, 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 blah. That's the anxiety side of it, right? It's like, if I don't do it, no one else will do it as good as me. So then I do it, and then you work the extra overtime, and you answer the late emails, and you work on the weekend, and whatever it is, right? But the thing about fight or flight is it's a very activating response. And so people will often look at it, and this is where it gets a little tricky, is high performers go, well, that's how I get everything done. And it's like, yeah, that is good. There's an activating part of it. But if you're in fight or flight all day long, then you are probably a person who's always on the red line, meaning slowing down feels scary. Meaning that if you don't have an afternoon that's filled with something, you go like, oh, I'm wasting time, or I'm lazy, or you find something to fill it up with, even if you don't consciously want to, right? I was on a consult with a lady the other day, and she's like, I knew I needed a break, and I had a Saturday with nothing. She's like, and then by the time Saturday came along, I already booked 4 things for us to do. And it's like, okay, so that's the subconscious. That's the fight or flight kicking into play. It's saying that if slowing down feels absolutely scary and we need to do something about it. Okay. But then what happens is you stay on the red line all the time. You have to constantly be high octane. Another common thing is my high performers, especially women who feel like they need to be in fight or flight all day long, they won't do anything except a high intensity workout. I need to burn my calories. I need to get a hardcore workout. And it's like, okay, like I get it, but then also like your cortisol levels are probably through the roof. And so you're actually counterproductive to this high intensity workout, because cortisol is making you gain weight anyways. You can't even lose it when it's high, right? Because it's protecting the body. It's a stress hormone. So these are the 2 ways that you will typically respond to stress: fight or flight, or freeze. And for the record, you will experience both throughout your life, and it may show up in different areas. So for instance, when it comes to business, I am fight or flight. When it comes to my personal relationships, I tend to freeze up a little bit more. So if you can relate to both of these, great. That just means you're human. Okay. Now, both of those we can regulate through. And what that means is, when you're in either of those states, you're dysregulated, what we want to do is we want to get you back to a regulated or balanced state so that your nervous system can come down and start to heal, right? And start to get you back into a normal place, because you can't grow when you're in survival mode. You can't. They can't coexist. You can't heal. You can't digest food. Like, you can't do any of that when you're in survival mode. And I always say the nervous system gives 0 fucks whether you're happy, healthy, growing, successful. It doesn't care about any of that. It just cares about keeping you alive. And so if all your nervous system has ever known is survival mode, being in fight or flight all day, or freeze, it's going to do whatever it can to keep you in that state, because that's what it knows. That's the strategy it knows. That's your comfort zone. And it will keep doing that and attract situations to you that keep you in that mode, even if you consciously want something different. Okay. So when it comes to the nervous system, we have to actively get you back into a balanced state. It is not enough to just want it and to think it consciously, because all these subconscious behaviors will come up. Because again, autonomic nervous system, automatic. These happen without us having to think about it. So our survival strategies, which we've developed since we were kids, are going to kick into play even if we want something different, right? Like your system is that strong that it will override your wants. Okay, so you might be like, again, I want this Saturday to myself. I just want to take a break. And your nervous system goes, nope, this is not what we do. This is not what keeps us safe. We're going to subconsciously fill your calendar up, put you in situations where we can get you back into fight or flight, because that's what we know. That's how we exist. That's where we go. It's wild, guys. It's wild. Like, your nervous system, unless you've learned to use it to your advantage, will work against you when it comes to growth and success and being happy. It's crazy, right? So fight or flight or freeze, okay? So what we want to do is, when you're in that state, we want to get you back to a regulated state. Now, the method in which you do that varies between whether you're in fight or flight or freeze. And this is where my gripe with some of the information out there regarding your nervous system, where I think the information is missing, is some people will hold, like, for instance, nervous system regulation classes. And I've been to a couple where, like, the information's not bad, but it's not designed based on what state I'm in. right? And that can make all the difference, because if you're in a freeze state, the fight or flight practices are not going to be good for you. And if you're in fight or flight, the freeze practices aren't going to be good for you, right? So you need to know which state you're in, and then from there apply the appropriate regulating practices. Okay. So let's start with freeze. So if you're in freeze, again, that's going to look like procrastination. That's going to look like putting things off. That's going to look like feeling anxiety below the surface, but being stuck and frozen and not knowing what to do or say or how to handle something. So the regulating practice when you're in freeze mode is to gradually start moving faster. Okay. We want to get you moving, because what that does is that tells your nervous system, hey, there's actually no real threat here. It's safe for me to move. So again, if we go back to that mouse example where you're the mouse being carried around, assuming that you're the mouse and you're a conscious being with choice over your actions, when you start moving after being in freeze, that tells the body, it's like, hey, we're safe to move. Okay. So that means there must not be a cat around anymore. That means there must not be a potential threat anymore. Right. So now your body can go into regulation. So the way you do that is, again, by actively getting the body moving in a gradual way. Too fast will be scary. Okay. It has to be gradual. So what are some ways we can do that? One thing you could do breath work. Okay. But it has to be an activating breath, not a relaxing breath. So like a fire breath that they do in yoga, things that are like more inhales, getting the inner temperature of the body up, getting the heart rate up. Okay. Things like going for a high intensity workout or drinking some caffeine. Again, for someone who's coming out of freeze and wants to get things moving, high intensity and caffeine are good because these are activating things. Okay. Trying new experiences, but in a safe way. So doing things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone that kind of get you a little like, a little excited and a little of the heart rate up, but in a way that's safe. Maybe you do it with a friend. Maybe you know, go sing karaoke with a friend or something like that. Something that's like obviously like not life threatening, but that's a little bit out of your comfort zone. Going for uphill hikes, again, things that are activating to your system, like anything that's going to put you in a more activated state. That's how you activate freeze. Okay. And what I would say is if you're in freeze, first off, you need to look at what's freezing you. So is it something business related? Is it something, in your personal relationship that's causing you to go to freeze? And then when you're trying to unfreeze and get activated, my suggestion is do it in an area that's not related to the thing that's freezing you to start. Okay. So for instance, if I'm freezing because again, I have to do this public speaking in 2 weeks and it's scaring me. Instead of doing like maybe more work around that, I would start to do work around something that's completely unrelated, but that can for that moment tell my nervous system that it's safe. Right. So if I have an hour of prep that I want to do towards this public speaking event in 2 weeks today, and I'm sitting there staring at it and being like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And I know I'm stuck. First of all, get away from the screen. That's another thing. If you're in freeze, you have to put the screens down, put your phone down, get away from the computer. Like sitting in front of it's going to keep you in a spell. If I know I have an hour of that prep, I'm going to get up from my computer and I'm going to go sprint around the building, or I'm going to go do, a minute of jumping jacks. That's a long time for jumping jacks, but I'm going to go do something that gets me out of my head and into my body, something that gets me gradually moving that has nothing to do with the thing that's freezing me. Okay. Because I guarantee you, if you get up from that presentation work and you go activate and regulate for 10 minutes and get your body moving, when you come back, your body's going to feel more safe to now start the thing that is quote unquote dysregulating to you. Okay. So again, coming out of freeze, drink some caffeine, do something that's a little stimulating, do some more intense breath work, get away from the screens, anything that's numbing, that is not your friend when you're in freeze. Anything that's going to slow you down more, stay away from the weed, like anything that has that like slow down effect on you, we want to get away from. We want to get you activated, get into a HIIT workout, get into fast movement, fast movement, intense movement, things that are exciting. Okay, that's what you want to do. The opposite is for fight or flight. Okay, if you are coming out of fight or flight, the remedy for that is you want to gradually slow down, okay? Because again, you're on the red line. You're on the red line all day long. So your comfort zone, your survival mode is being on 10, on 10, on 10, okay? So it goes, the bear's chasing us, the bear's chasing us, the bear's chasing us, we got to run. So the way we cue your nervous system that it's safe in the present moment is to gradually slow you down, okay? Because again, if we use the bear example, a bear's chasing me. If you can stop and sit on a pillow for a minute and do some breathing, your nervous system's going to go, oh, there must not actually be a bear coming if she's got time to sit down and do this. There must not be a threat. So now it starts to switch up and it goes out of sympathetic into parasympathetic. It goes out of being dysregulated into a regulated state because you've cued the body that there's actually no threat. Okay. So ways to gradually slow down out of fight or flight. Again, gradual is key. Stopping and meditating is probably too much of an abrupt stop. And that's also, I will say that, why a lot of fight or flight people have a hard time with meditating is because it's too big of a drop in speed. When you're coming off the red line and all of a sudden you're like breaking to zero, it's too abrupt for the system. And it almost throws you more into survival mode because it's like, whoa, this is too slow. Like, this doesn't feel safe either. He's going to eat me, right? The bear's going to get me. So that's why we want it gradual. So again, breath work, you can do it. But when you're coming out of fight or flight, you want breath work that's going to slow you down and relax you. So something like a 4-7-8. So inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. A long exhale activates the rest and digest part of your system, the regulating part of your system. Okay. So anything with a long exhale is good when you're coming out of fight or flight. We want to gradually slow you down. So this is, my clients hate this. You want to stay away from caffeine. I never like when I make these suggestions. You want to stay away from caffeine when you're in fight or flight, and you want to stay away from high intensity. Okay. I know that's your comfort zone. I know my girlies who love the high intensity workouts. I know that you want to stay there, but it's the exact opposite of what your nervous system needs in this moment. Okay. So you want to do more restorative classes, maybe a yin yoga, some stretching, slow dancing, things that keep the body moving, but in a, again, gradual slow down pace. This is what's going to be better for your nervous system. Even walking, just maybe you're going for a 10-minute walk or half an hour walk instead. Obviously walking is really good for the body, but again, it's at a slower pace. Okay. Things like, just bodily experiences that slow down. Massage, that could be a self massage, that could be massaging your pet or your partner or whatever the case is. Activations in the body, tensing up your muscles and releasing, right? Like things that keep you moving, but again, gradually slow you down. Because again, we want to tell the body there's no threat. It's okay. And so this is what is so important to distinguish, right? That the healing practice for either state is the exact opposite. And this is why I say a lot of these classes and information out there are missing this, because if I am in fight or flight and I try to do the freeze regulating, which is getting myself more activated, then it's not going to work. You're not going to regulate. You're just going to keep staying in the state that you're in. And so you need to really understand when you're in freeze, when you're in fight or flight, and then you need to be like, okay, so what's the goal? Either gradually speed up or gradually slow down, and then apply it. Okay. Now, here's the thing with these regulating practices is most people don't do anything till they need it. Okay. So once you're like super exhausted, you're like, okay, now I'm going to go to yoga class. Now I'm going to go do something really slow or meditate. That's not the way this is effective. If you're only doing this when you're in a state of crisis, you're just going to maintain the state you're in. You're not actually going to fix your burnout or heal actually regulate your nervous system. The key is to do it incrementally, consistently, so that you can build up the capacity of the amount of stress that your nervous system can handle, right? Because the reason that you're burnt out or you're dysregulated consistently is not because you're like you can't handle it, or you can't handle stress properly, you can't handle the job or whatever's weighing at you, it's not because of that. It's because your body doesn't know how to handle, manage, process the stress efficiently, so it gets stuck in your body, right? But again, if you're only waiting till you're in dire need of doing it, then all it's going to do is it's going to band-aid it for a little bit, and then you're going to keep doing the same thing that you're doing and keep ending up with your back against the wall. Okay. So what I advise is you need to start scheduling in regulating practices every day to introduce these moments of what it means to be regulated to your nervous system, because your nervous system's going to fight it, right? Like if we're talking about fight or flight and it's the idea of slowing down that's scary, the first couple times it happens to all my clients when I go, okay, you need to like schedule in 10-minute breaks like twice a day. This is just when we're at the basics before we get into like the really integrating it into their life. I can remember one client in particular. I'm like, well, how'd the regulating practices go this week? And she goes, oh, good. I didn't need it. And I was like, what do you mean I didn't need it? She's like, well, it's fine. I just got through everything okay. And I was like, okay, but like, how are you feeling today? She's like, well, I haven't slept really well the last few nights. And you know what I mean? So her body just overrode it because it goes, well, you've never done this before. Why do we need to do this now? You want to stop for 10 minutes? Like, we don't have 10 minutes. Everyone has 10 minutes, by the way. But your body's going to play tricks on you. And it's go, we don't have 10 minutes to do this. Like, no, come on, we got to get this done. Your system is going to try and override it. So this is why you need to schedule them in. I suggest twice a day just to start, right? Scheduling 10-minute breaks every day to regulate your nervous system. And the way you have to look at this is these are refueling breaks. Okay. So if you're on a cross country road trip and you're driving from Vancouver to Toronto, for all my Canadians, okay, you're going from west to east, okay, and you want to get there as fast as you can. That's what fight or flight is. I need to get to Toronto. I need to get to Toronto, okay, as fast as I can. That's where the problem's going to get solved. And you can either try and push your tank to the limit and get there and hope you can get there on one tank. I know that's not realistic, but for the example, it is. I can either push my boundaries and see if I can get there on one tank, or I could stop I can plan it a couple stops along the way and make sure I take the time to refuel to guarantee that I'm going to get there. Because I either chance it and try and push on one tank of fuel and potentially not make it at all, break down on the side of the road, burnout, and then need someone to come refuel me. I've just wasted how many hours waiting for a tow truck, blah, 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 and then eventually get there. I can chance that in hopes that I can just solve it right now. Or I can schedule in a couple refuels along the way to ensure that I get there. It might take me a little bit longer, but as I do that, I'm going to make sure I get there and hit my goal. It's the same thing. When you schedule in these refueling breaks, what you're doing is you're prepping your nervous system for what it means to be in balance and regulated more. And again, at this point, your nervous system probably is unfamiliar with that, and like slowing down or being balanced and present in the moment will feel scary to it. We need to introduce it incrementally. So the more that you do it, the nervous system goes, oh, this isn't so bad. Oh, I kind of like this. Oh, this actually feels good. Oh, I can actually grow. I can actually attract the relationship I want and the project that I want. And I can knock this out of the park. And all these things start to open up because you're expanding the capacity of what your nervous system can handle. Okay. So what you want to do is twice a day, book in 10-minute increments. I suggest booking those in around the parts of your days that typically get the most activated. So if you have right before lunch at like 11:30 is when you kind of start to hit your breaking point in the morning, book it in then. And then if like at the end of the day before you're about to go home and you want to make sure you don't carry that energy home with you, you book it in then, great. Like I'll let you be the judge of that, but schedule it in. It is not enough to remember it. Your body will override that thought process. I'm telling you right now. You might be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll remember. You won't. Your body won't remember it because it's not a priority to it, because you haven't been doing this for decades. Why is it a priority now? So schedule it in your phone, set alarms, set reminders in your calendars. And this is just for the beginning till this starts to be a regular practice for you. Okay. But as you do this, your nervous system is going to adapt to a new way of existing in your body. And when you are able to be more in your balanced state more often, this is where you now raise the bar for what exists in your life. what is considered healthy, what is considered balance. And again, when you're in your balanced state, that part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex that allows you to think big picture and see big picture and see beyond this gray doom and gloom veil that you might be in right now while you're in survival mode. And it starts to ask some good questions. Do I like living this way? Do I want this person in my life? Do I want to keep working here? Do I want to keep doing things this way? Do I need to keep reacting this way? Now you can see clearer and ask these questions and answer them from an empowered place, not a survival place, because nothing good comes from answering things out of fear. You know what I mean? It comes from survival. It doesn't come from a place of big picture and growth and thinking outside your comfort zone, which is what we all want to do if we want to grow. It's very hard to think and attract and build the life that you want to live when you're stuck in fear all day long. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're dysregulated. You're in fear. Point blank period. No way around it. And the fuckery of it, excuse my language, and I'm speaking from experience, is that you might be kicking ass right now. Like you might be like, but I'm making good money and I have this career and I have all this stuff, and you're in survival mode. It's like, okay, cool, good for you. That just shows the level of what you're capable of. But think if you could do that from a more like balanced state, like your trajectory would be on a completely different level. Right. And most importantly, it'd be sustainable. Whatever you want to go after, it'll be sustainable. Like what I've seen from people regulating their nervous system and learning how to like not regulate it once, but learning how to really master that instrument has been incredible. I've had clients who've had people make jobs for them, like not even go from like, oh, I want to find a new job, have people seek out them and create whatever job they wanted, paid them what they wanted, like wild. I've had clients attract their dream home, like all of a sudden, like they're like, I think I'm outgrowing this space, it doesn't feel good anymore, and then boom, their dream place comes up on the market and they're in there within a month. I've had clients bring themselves out of crazy deficits in their business, like almost six-figure deficits in their business, and bring themselves out of it and come back into the green without burning out. I've had clients heal their IBS symptoms, like clients who when they first started talking to me, like pretty much every day had some form of constipation or diarrhea or digestion issues, and within a matter of few weeks, like went from like almost 100% of the time to 20% of the time. I've had clients who went almost daily with having a drink to going months without having a drink. Like the results that you can get from regulating your nervous system and knowing how to use it as a strategic tool for the quality of your life has been astronomical. And every day I do this, it continues to floor me the results people get from this. Okay. So that's it. That's it. That's the basis of what you need to know. Okay. And once you get the basics down, there's layers to it. Okay. There's levels to this. You can get deeper and deeper with it. I obviously understand my nervous system pretty well, but I'm still constantly learning new things about myself. But every time I do, my life gets better and better and better. And what's interesting is what is successful to me and what makes me happy now is completely different than what I thought it would have been a couple years ago. And every day I get to fine tune that more and more for myself and really get in alignment with the life that makes me happy and what I want to do. And that's all because I learned to regulate my nervous system. That's all because I learned how to get out of scarcity and get out of fear and think from a place of like big picture and have faith and what's possible. And the cool thing about that is all those might all sound kind of like fluffy words. It's all based in science. Everything I just told you guys, and even that follow the science, like after COVID, that even has some weird connotations now, but like this is all scientific based. This is all biology, physiology, factual information that you can hear lots of other people talk about as well too. Right? But this is a way for you to improve the quality of your life in a way that you can control it, that you have full autonomy over. Okay. But it just takes understanding your system and your instrument. And just like any business, we all know that the better your systems, the more efficient you are. Right? The more you can scale, the more you can grow. And so right now you're managing and processing your stress on a certain system. And if you're constantly dysregulated or burnt out, then that means that system needs an upgrade. And this is step one to upgrading that system. Okay. And I promise you that if you learn to do this and this becomes like the number one thing for the rest of your life, I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. There is no limit to what you can accomplish or attract or achieve or build in this life. Like truly, I see it time and time again through my own life, through my clients' life. Like the things that people are doing is wow. It's wow. That's all I can say. Like it constantly surprises me and shocks me in the best way. And I know what's possible. Like I see it all the time. And so if there's anything that you want to do for yourself, if there's anything that you want to do for your family or your team or your business, and you want to show up as the best version of you, then this is what the first step you need to take. You need to learn how your body's currently processing stress, and you need to improve that system so that you can show up as the best version for yourself, your family, your kids, your spouse, your team, your business. Like it's the greatest gift you can give the world. So that's your basics of following through, how to regulate your nervous system. Okay. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM on Instagram, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always here to have these conversations. Let me know how it goes. Let me know if you have any questions. But if you start to do this, this is the first step to the best chapter of your life. I promise you.